It took me a little bit to come around to the Aaliyah remaining a fetus the whole movie, and now, a year and some change later, it feels like the right choice to me.
That is interesting, too, because there are some choices that Denis Villeneuve has made that I do understand, because I understand that this is a very dense source material and it's being translated into an entirely different medium, a visual medium. And with the source material as well, Dune has a lot of inner dialogue. So there's a lot of things that have to be conveyed visually or through conversation. And I think that in large part, Villeneuve did an excellent job at conveying the themes and what's going on with at least the main character arcs. And especially with Paul Atreides. So I applaud him for that he got the main themes right when it came to the most important character of Paul. And there were some choices that I did understand. I realized it was going to be hard to have the toddler Aaliyah aged up in there, especially with how they decide to break up the films, which is before the time jump occurs. So there would have had to have been a time jump somewhere in part 2. And they said the reasoning that they didn't do that was to keep the sense of urgency. And I understand that, especially as they were making a war epic. So I get that. If they had separated it into 3 movies, then maybe it would have been better, and like leaving the second film right at the time jump and then picking up a few years later with the third film. If they'd separated like that, which is what the Dune miniseries did, I think that would have flowed better, would have made much more sense. But how they decided to do it with 2 films, I can understand to a degree the changes there to Aaliyah. But I do think, and this is my hope for Dune 3, and why I hope that if they stick with the title Dune Part 3, that means then that they're going to make up some of Aaliyah's backstory that was missing from Dune Part 2, because I feel like it's really vital to her character arc in Messiah, and also would justify Lady Jessica's appearance in Part 3 as well.
That's true. That's a good point. In my opinion, her appearance is basically a guarantee. I think from the average viewer's perspective, if I were to go, watch Part 2 in theaters and it ends with Lady Jessica talking about how, it's really just getting started, and then in Part 3 she just isn't there, it would be extremely confusing. And we know that Denis has a soft spot for Jessica and Rebecca, the actress. So I think it's almost a guarantee that she's going to be a part of this movie.
After Dune Part 2's release, even then I was hoping that we would see Lady Jessica in the next installment, because how much it means to Aaliyah's backstory. And she could be that sounding board to let the audience know what really happened in the womb during the Water of Life ceremony. We know that she awoke in the womb. We know that she was aware and she could hear her. I don't think it was conveyed as to the horror of what actually happened to Aaliyah, that she was given all of the memories of not just her female genetic ancestry, but also all of the wild fremen Reverend Mothers that was given to Jessica, she received as well. So she never had a childhood when she is born. She's going to be born a full-on Reverend Mother. Even in Dune, she is seen as a freak among the fremen. Very odd. She's a toddler who's speaking and knowing things that she shouldn't. And I feel like that's such a huge part of her personality and her character, to be seen as such an outsider or such an unusual and strange individual is looked at with suspicion, and she's the abomination. So I feel like Lady Jessica having conversations of what all would happen to her in the womb, and seeing also Jessica's sadness about what she put her daughter through, I think is important to her character, having to face the consequences of those desperate actions. And I think it would only serve Dune Part 3 the better to have that backstory.
Yeah, I agree. If Part 2 had another 10 minutes to add to it, I might just say give both of the Water of Life scenes more room to breathe and more importance, because man, that was like such an important moment in so many different characters' arcs. And gosh, if they had just a little more time, I think we could have seen some crazy visual. There was a chance to play with some really fun visual effects and storytelling devices. That scene could have just been way crazier.
I think the Dune miniseries does it very well. Actually, it's my favorite adaptation of that scene.
You're really selling me on watching this.
Saska Reeves, who plays Lady Jessica, is my favorite performance of that character, straight out of the book, in my opinion. But how they do that scene is really interesting. And that's, of course, on a paltry TV budget. But I thought that they did that very well, just to convey what was going on. It's very strange. She's seeing within her mind's eye. They convey what's happening to Aaliyah. she has to see all that Lady Jessica has to see. They're both going through this process. And the way Lady Jessica is with Aaliyah there, she's soothing her throughout that whole thing. It's one of my favorite parts of Lady Jessica's character because so much is going on. It's so dramatic, and Aaliyah should never have been put in that situation, but it was just such a desperate situation. But she still comforts her through all of that, and Aaliyah has to live with the consequences of it. It's really sad, and that's why Aaliyah is one of the most beloved characters, is because there's so much drama and tragedy surrounding her, and she just gets a bad turn through no actions of her own. She's in this situation, and so it's really sad. We really feel for her. That's what I hope is conveyed, that we feel that for Aaliyah, the consequence of the tragedy of her character.
Aaliyah has got to be my favorite character.
Oh, really?
Big Aaliyah fan. Big Aaliyah, and obviously Paul is the obvious choice, but yeah.
So it's interesting. I originally fan casted Anya Taylor Joy to be Princess Irulan. So when I heard that she was playing Aaliyah, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I remember seeing a lot of fan castings. I didn't know that you were part of that. And Bartos did some artworks. She definitely has the Irulan look, if we're talking book accuracy.
I could definitely see it as Aaliyah, and I thought it was funny too, her costume choice for the world premiere at DUNE Part 2. It was like, oh, that definitely looks like the religious figure of Aaliyah, Saint Aaliyah of the Knife. But yeah, Anya Taylor Joy as Aaliyah, I'm excited to see that and her interchanges with Timothée Chalamet and Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah.
So there are things I'm actually specifically very hopeful for and optimistic for, and that's one of them. Hopefully now with Rebecca Ferguson, my hope, if I have any basis for it, to have those conversations making up for her backstory that we skimmed over in Dune, but also her connection to Duncan Idaho and that relationship there. And that's one of the things I praise so much about Villeneuve's interpretation, is that he gave Duncan Idaho his due justice. Because in previous adaptations, because he's I guess you could call him a minor character, they barely had him in it. In the David Lynch version and the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries of Dune, he's barely in it. And while Duncan Idaho is minor or supporting, but his actions are very significant, and they're really felt throughout the course of the story. He's the first one that goes to Arrakis. He's the first introduction that the Fremen have of House Atreides. His actions are incredibly significant to how the story works out. And his relationship to Paul is very significant. So I love that Villeneuve had that scene in there in part 1 before Duncan goes to Arrakis. They have this moment, him and Paul. And I love that scene. And it's an original scene, but I feel like it's still in keeping within the spirit of the source material, because that is their relationship. And it's one of the things that I'm so grateful for it exists, especially with Dune Messiah happening, because you've already paved the way for that relationship and the drama that's going to come with his return. So that's one of the things I'm the most hopeful for and optimistic for, because of what we've already seen.
It's true. He left a lot of doors open and a lot of cool possibilities with that friendship. And then I do wonder if they're going to do the Duncan and Aaliyah. I mean, it's nice that Aaliyah, for modern day media purposes, it's nice that Aaliyah is aged up, makes it a lot easier to digest as an audience.
And I think that's just par for the course for adaptations for this universe. Usually all of the characters that were young, like Paul Atreides is 15 when Dune starts.
Yeah.
And I think both Kyle MacLachlan and I think Timothée Chalamet too are around 24. And I feel like the characters are young, but they're definitely wise beyond their years. And especially with Aaliyah, she's a full adult in her mind. And you could definitely see the challenges in casting someone, a young actor, to do that. So it makes sense for all of these previous adaptations have gone the route of just aging up the actors and the characters to fit that. With James McAvoy too, they were older. Alec Newman, they're all older than how the source material describes. And it fits because that's how they act. These are actors able to bring those roles to life in that way. It'd be very challenging to make it book accurate in that regard.